Most men don't realize this, but problems with women rarely start with women. They start with men abandoning structure, not intentionally, not consciously, but slowly, subtly, in ways that feel reasonable in the moment. And by the time the problems show up, the damage is already done. The biggest lie men are taught about relationships is that harmony comes from effort, from being understanding, from being patient, from giving more. So when friction appears, their instinct is to double down, explain more clearly, compromise more deeply, absorb more discomfort. They believe maturity means endurance. What they don't understand is that attraction and respect are not built on endurance. They're built on orientation, on where a man stands in relation to himself. When that orientation collapses, chaos fills the gap. So before we talk about rules, understand this. These are not tactics, they are not tricks, they are not ways to control women. They are rules for self-containment, and men who violate them don't just struggle with women, they struggle with themselves. The first rule is foundational and non-negotiable. Never lead with emotional exposure before emotional stability. Most men misunderstand vulnerability. They've been told that openness equals intimacy, that sharing insecurities early creates closeness, that showing emotional depth proves authenticity. What actually happens is the opposite. When emotional exposure comes before emotional grounding, it creates instability. A woman doesn't feel closer to a man who reveals confusion, fear, or insecurity without demonstrating that he can hold himself together. She feels uncertain. Because vulnerability without containment feels like a request, not a gift. It feels like emotional weight being handed over prematurely. Men who avoid problems understand that emotional openness must rest on a foundation of internal order. They don't hide their feelings, they don't suppress emotion, but they don't bleed on someone who hasn't earned the right to be trusted with it. They reveal depth slowly, proportionally, as stability is demonstrated on both sides. This isn't about being cold, it's about timing. When vulnerability is premature, it erodes polarity. When it's grounded, it builds connection. The second rule is equally important. Never allow ambiguity about your direction. Women are not attracted to men who have everything figured out. They are attracted to men who are moving. Direction creates gravity. Even uncertainty is tolerable when momentum exists. What destroys attraction is stagnation disguised as reflection. Men who constantly talk about potential without execution, plans without action, or dreams without discipline create unease. Not because ambition is lacking, but because coherence is missing. Words and behavior don't align. Men who avoid problems don't oversell their future. They live it quietly. Their direction is visible in their routines, priorities, and constraints. They don't need to convince. They don't need to promise. Their life already speaks. This matters because when a woman senses a lack of direction, she instinctively fills the vacuum. She questions, she probes, she tests, not out of malice, but out of uncertainty. And most men interpret that as disrespect, when it's actually diagnosis. Clarity eliminates interrogation. Direction eliminates drama. The third rule sounds simple, but almost no one follows it. Never make her the regulator of your emotional state. The moment your mood depends on her tone, her availability, her reassurance, you've inverted the relationship. You've placed her above you psychologically. From that point forward, every interaction carries pressure. She feels it even if she can't articulate it. Men who do this don't realize what they're signaling. They think they're showing care. What they're actually showing is fragility. They're asking her nervous system to stabilize theirs. And that creates resistance, not closeness. Men who avoid problems self-regulate first. They process disappointment privately. They calm themselves before responding. They don't chase emotional relief through contact. They don't need immediate reassurance to function. This doesn't make them distant, it makes them safe. Because emotional self-sufficiency allows connection without burden. The fourth rule is where most men sabotage themselves without noticing. Never negotiate attraction. Attraction is not a discussion, it is not a contract, it is not something you reason into existence. And the moment a man tries to argue for his worth, explain why he deserves desire, or plead his case emotionally, attraction collapses. Men negotiate attraction when they over-justify, when they seek reassurance after every disagreement. when they ask for confirmation instead of observing behavior, when they try to fix chemistry with logic. Men who avoid problems understand a brutal truth. If attraction has to be explained, it's already gone. They don't fight for interest, they observe it, they respond to it, and when it fades consistently, they step back instead of stepping forward. That restraint is not weakness, it is clarity. The fifth rule completes this foundation. Never confuse attention with interest. Attention can be driven by boredom, validation, curiosity, or convenience. Interest requires investment, time, effort, consistency. Many men mistake availability for desire and then feel blindsided when things collapse. Men who avoid problems don't chase mixed signals. They don't decode breadcrumbs. They look for alignment between words and actions. When alignment is missing, they don't rationalize it. They adjust their investment accordingly. This isn't pessimism, it's intelligence. Here's the pattern emerging already. None of these rules are about controlling women. They are about refusing to abandon yourself for proximity. Problems begin when a man trades stability for access, restraint for reassurance, and clarity for approval. And we've only laid the groundwork. Most relationship problems don't announce themselves. They don't begin with betrayal or explosive conflict. They begin with misplaced investment, with a man giving more than the situation warrants, not because he's generous, but because he's anxious. And anxiety, when it drives behavior, always creates imbalance. So the next rule is critical. Never invest more than the relationship can currently sustain. This is where men get it wrong. They assume early intensity builds security. They believe that going all in proves seriousness. But intensity without context creates pressure, not connection. When a man overinvests before trust, compatibility, and reciprocity are established, he distorts the value dynamic. Think about what overinvestment actually communicates. It says, I'm certain before I have evidence. It says, I'm willing to risk more than I know. And beneath that, it often says, I'm afraid to lose this even though it hasn't been built yet. None of that creates attraction. It creates unease. Men who avoid problems pace themselves. Not to play games, but because they respect reality. They understand that intimacy deepens through shared experience over time, not emotional dumping or grand gestures up front. Their investment grows as the relationship proves itself. The next rule follows naturally. Never reward behavior you don't want repeated. This sounds obvious, yet men violate it constantly. They reward flakiness with flexibility, disrespect with forgiveness, inconsistency with effort, emotional withdrawal with reassurance, and then they're shocked when those behaviors become patterns. Human behavior is shaped by reinforcement, not intention. When poor behavior is met with patience instead of consequence, it stabilizes. The relationship adapts around it. And soon, the man finds himself tolerating conditions he never would have accepted at the start. Men who avoid problems respond to behavior, not promises. They don't argue about what should happen. They observe what does happen and adjust their presence accordingly. Consistency earns access. Inconsistency creates distance. No speech is required. Then comes a rule that separates stable men from reactive ones. Never chase clarity from someone who benefits from ambiguity. When a woman keeps things undefined, vague, or emotionally blurred, many men respond by seeking clarity through pressure. More questions, more conversations, more emotional probing. They believe resolution comes from discussion, but ambiguity often serves a purpose. It allows flexibility without commitment, attention without accountability. And when a man chases clarity from someone who benefits from keeping things unclear, he hands over leverage. Men who avoid problems don't force definitions. They define themselves. They decide what they're available for. If clarity doesn't emerge naturally, they move on internally, even if they stay polite externally. They don't linger in confusion, hoping it will resolve itself. Another crucial rule: never mistake empathy for obligation. Understanding someone's pain does not mean carrying it. Supporting someone does not mean sacrificing yourself. Many men stay in unhealthy situations because they confuse compassion with responsibility. They feel guilty for leaving someone who's struggling, even when the relationship is draining them. Empathy without boundaries turns into self-betrayal. And self-betrayal always creates resentment. Over time, that resentment leaks out through tone, withdrawal, or passive aggression, poisoning the relationship anyway. Men who avoid problems are compassionate, but not consumable. They can care without collapsing. They recognize that adults are responsible for managing their own wounds. Love is support, not self-erasure. Now we move into one of the most misunderstood rules. Never try to secure a relationship by removing all tension. Tension is not conflict, it is polarity. It is the space between two autonomous people choosing each other. When a man tries to eliminate all discomfort, all uncertainty, all friction, he creates emotional flatness. And flatness kills attraction. Men do this by over-explaining, over-accommodating, and preemptively solving problems that don't exist yet. They believe peace comes from smoothing every edge. What they create instead is boredom and imbalance. Men who avoid problems allow tension to exist without panic. They don't rush to soothe every discomfort. They let disagreements breathe. They don't need constant reassurance that everything is okay. Their calm allows resolution to happen organically. Finally, in this section, there is a rule that governs respect at the deepest level. Never stay where your presence is taken for granted. Gratitude is not verbal, it's behavioral. When your time, effort, and energy are received without appreciation, acknowledged without reciprocity, something has shifted. And men who ignore that shift slowly disappear inside themselves. Men who avoid problems notice when appreciation fades. They don't accuse, they don't demand gratitude, they reduce availability, they restore balance. And if nothing changes, they leave without bitterness, because staying where you are taken for granted teaches others how to devalue you. By now, the pattern should be clear. These rules are not about dominance, they are about discernment. They are not about withholding, they are about proportion. Men who follow them don't experience fewer emotions, they experience fewer problems. There is a moment in most failing relationships that never gets talked about, not the breakup, not the argument. The moment when a man realizes quietly that something has shifted and he did nothing about it. He felt the loss of respect before he could name it. He noticed the change in tone, the casual dismissal, the way his presence started to feel optional. And instead of responding, he adjusted. He softened. He tried harder. That moment is where most problems are locked in. So the next rule is one men avoid because it feels confrontational, but it's unavoidable. Never ignore early signs of disrespect. Disrespect does not arrive fully formed. It starts as minor erosion. Interruptions, dismissive humor, subtle condescension, decisions made without consultation. Many men excuse these because they don't want to appear insecure or controlling. They tell themselves it's not worth addressing. What they don't realize is that silence is also communication. When disrespect goes unchallenged, it becomes permission. Men who avoid problems respond early, calmly, and proportionally. They don't explode. They don't moralize. They name the behavior and state their standard. Once, then they watch. Respect either returns or it doesn't. And that outcome tells them everything they need to know. The next rule sharpens this principle. Never set boundaries you aren't prepared to enforce. A boundary without consequence is a suggestion, and suggestions are ignored when inconvenient. Many men announce boundaries emotionally in moments of frustration, and then immediately violate them themselves out of fear of losing the relationship. What that teaches is simple. Your limits are flexible, your words are negotiable, your self-respect can be tested. Men who avoid problems treat boundaries as behavioral commitments, not emotional statements. They don't threaten. They don't warn repeatedly. They adjust their behavior when a line is crossed. Distance, reduced access, withdrawal of investment, and if necessary, departure. Boundaries are not about controlling another person. They are about controlling your participation. The next rule is uncomfortable, but essential. Never stay to prove your worth. When a man feels he needs to convince a woman of his value, he's already lost leverage. Attraction is not persuaded into existence. It is either present or it isn't. Staying to prove yourself creates a dynamic where you are auditioning for approval, not sharing mutual interest. Men who do this rationalize it as patience or loyalty. In reality, it's fear of walking away, and fear always weakens position. Men who avoid problems don't audition. They observe, they contribute when interest is mutual, and when effort becomes one-sided, they disengage without hostility. They don't take it personally. They understand that lack of interest is information, not an insult. Now we arrive at a rule most men misunderstand entirely. Never confuse control with leadership. By now, it should be clear that these rules are not romantic in the traditional sense. They are not soft, they are not comforting, but they are honest, and honesty creates stability. One of the most destructive habits men develop in relationships is prioritizing peace over respect. It sounds reasonable on the surface. Avoid conflict, keep things smooth, don't make a big deal out of small issues. But over time, this mindset doesn't produce peace. It produces quiet resentment and escalating disrespect. Here's the hard truth. Peace without respect is not peace, it's submission disguised as maturity. Men who constantly smooth things over teach others that harmony matters more to them than dignity. They become predictable in the worst way. They will swallow irritation. They will tolerate small violations. They will choose silence over friction. And once that pattern is established, the relationship adjusts around it. Disrespect doesn't escalate because a woman suddenly changes. It escalates because the man quietly permits it. So the next rule is unavoidable. Never trade self-respect for temporary calm. Men who avoid problems understand that short-term discomfort is often the price of long-term stability. Addressing an issue early, calmly and directly prevents it from becoming structural. Avoiding it only ensures it grows. You are not preserving the relationship by staying silent. You are postponing its decline. Now let's address something men rarely want to hear. Attraction is not sustained by kindness alone. Kindness is necessary. It is not sufficient. Many men assume that being good, supportive, and accommodating will naturally produce loyalty and desire. When it doesn't, they feel betrayed by the idea of fairness itself. But relationships don't operate on moral accounting. They operate on emotional dynamics. Respect, polarity, and value are maintained through behavior, not intention. Men who avoid problems are kind without being accommodating. They are generous without being excessive. They don't use niceness as currency. They don't expect affection in exchange for good behavior. They give freely, but selectively, and without self-abandonment. Another crucial rule follows from this. Never seek reassurance for things you should be observing. Many men ask questions they already know the answers to. Are you happy? Do you still like me? Is everything okay between us? These questions are rarely about information. They are about anxiety. When a man asks for reassurance instead of reading behavior, he signals insecurity. He places emotional labor on her to stabilize him. And worse, he teaches himself to ignore reality in favor of comforting words. Men who avoid problems watch actions. Consistency, investment, tone, effort. They don't interrogate interest, they respond to it. When behavior changes, they adjust their involvement. No drama, no pleading, just calibration. Now we reach a rule that governs long-term outcomes more than anything else. Never allow a relationship to become your primary source of identity. This is where men slowly disappear. Their hobbies fade, their friendships shrink, their ambitions soften. Everything becomes organized around the relationship, and at first, this feels like commitment. Later, it feels like suffocation. A relationship cannot sustain the weight of being someone's entire identity. It collapses under it. Men who avoid problems maintain multiple sources of meaning. Purpose, work, physical discipline, friendships, solitude. Their life remains structured regardless of relationship status. This makes them resilient. And resilience is deeply attractive. The next rule is subtle but powerful. Never explain your standards to someone committed to violating them. Many men waste energy justifying boundaries to people who have no intention of respecting them. They debate, they reason, they hope clarity will create compliance. What they don't realize is that explanation is only useful when there is goodwill. Men who avoid problems recognize when explanation becomes negotiation, and they stop. They don't over-communicate standards. They demonstrate them through action. Distance replaces dialogue when dialogue is no longer productive. Then there is a rule that separates men who stabilize relationships from those who destabilize them. Never escalate emotionally to regain control. Raising your voice, issuing ultimatums in anger, making dramatic declarations. These behaviors don't assert strength. They reveal loss of composure. Emotional escalation signals that you've lost leverage and are trying to reclaim it forcefully. Men who avoid problems regulate downward, not upward. They slow the interaction. They pause. They disengage when necessary. Their calm becomes the dominant tone. This prevents conflict from spiraling and preserves authority without aggression. Now we need to address the fear most men never admit, the fear of being alone. So here is the rule that underlies all others. Never tolerate a dynamic you wouldn't accept if you weren't afraid of losing her. Fear distorts judgment. It lowers standards. It rationalizes mistreatment. Men convince themselves they're being flexible when they're actually being afraid. Men who avoid problems make decisions from self-trust, not scarcity. They know that being alone is not a failure. It is preferable to being diminished. This knowledge frees them from desperation. And desperation is the root of nearly every relational mistake. By this point, the pattern should be unmistakable. Problems with women are rarely caused by women behaving badly. They are caused by men abandoning clarity, boundaries, and self-respect in pursuit of comfort and approval. By now, you should see something clearly. None of these rules are about becoming harder, colder, or detached. They're about becoming anchored. Most men don't struggle with women because they lack empathy or effort. They struggle because they lack an internal center strong enough to remain intact under emotional pressure. When a man has no center, the relationship becomes his anchor, and anything that threatens it feels like a threat to his identity. That's when he negotiates his standards, tolerates behavior he resents, and confuses endurance with maturity. Problems don't arise because he cares too much. They arise because he cares without structure. So here is the final rule that integrates everything. Never enter or remain in a relationship that requires you to abandon yourself to maintain it. This rule sounds obvious until you examine how often men violate it quietly. They stop saying what they think. They stop doing what matters to them. They stop enforcing boundaries. They stop trusting their own perception. And they call it compromise. But compromise that consistently costs you your dignity is not compromise. It is erosion. Men who avoid problems are flexible without being formless. They adapt without disappearing. They adjust without surrendering their core. That balance is what allows intimacy to deepen without becoming destructive. Now let's correct a dangerous misunderstanding. Many men believe that following these rules will make them less loving, less open, less emotionally available. The opposite is true. When a man is grounded, his generosity becomes clean. His affection has weight. His presence feels safe rather than needy. A man with structure doesn't love from fear. He loves from choice, and that distinction changes everything. When you are no longer afraid of losing a woman, you stop trying to manage her reactions. You listen without self-erasure. You disagree without hostility. You walk away from disrespect without drama. You don't threaten to leave. You simply become unavailable to dynamics that diminish you. This is what real confidence looks like, not bravado, not dominance, quiet selectivity. Women sense this immediately, not because you tell them, but because your behavior is coherent. Your words match your actions. Your standards are consistent. You don't oscillate between intensity and withdrawal. You don't over-explain. You don't plead your case. You don't chase reassurance. You become predictable in the right way. Now here is the part most men miss. These rules do not guarantee you keep a woman, and they're not meant to. Their purpose is to ensure that who you become in relationships is someone you respect. Some women will leave when you stop overgiving. Some will push back when you enforce boundaries. Some will lose interest when they can no longer control the emotional frame. That is not failure, that is filtration. The men who suffer most in relationships are the ones who try to be universally acceptable. They flatten themselves to avoid conflict. They betray their instincts to keep peace. and in doing so, they create relationships that feel hollow, tense, and exhausting. The men who succeed accept something most men resist. Not every connection is meant to last. Not every woman is meant to stay. And that's not a tragedy. It's reality. Once you accept this, you stop trying to force outcomes. You stop negotiating attraction. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop investing in ambiguity. You stop explaining your worth to people unwilling to see it. And that shift doesn't just reduce problems with women, it reduces anxiety, it reduces resentment, it reduces emotional volatility. Your relationships become fewer but cleaner, deeper but calmer, more honest and far less draining. So let's end with clarity. If you want to avoid problems with women, do not try to master women. Master your reactions, your standards, your boundaries, your sense of direction. Build a life that does not collapse if a relationship ends. Become emotionally self-contained. Invest where effort is matched. Leave where respect is absent. Do this, and something interesting happens. Like, share, and subscribe. Support the channel link in description.